Scientists conducted an experiment in order to substantiate the data regarding the object. The man who was sentenced to death for murder had just spent the last 8 years in remorse and had become a zealous Catholic. Nevertheless, he was dispatched to SCP-3062. The object took the form of an angel and appeared to the man, calling him a sinner. The employee defended himself, stating that he had repented, at which point the entity called him a liar. SCP-3062 then assumed the form of Jesus Christ, as he's often depicted in the modern world. He summoned the man, and when he approached, the object stabbed him with a sword. The weapon itself turned into sand, of course, and the wound vanished. On its third appearance, the object came in the form of a classic devil. He gave the D-Class employee some water, telling him that kindness still exists. When the man took a drink, however, the water turned into sand, and a terrible laugh erupted. After that, connection to the employee was lost, and they were unable to find him. For the time being, the only thing the Foundation can do is track SCP-3062 and its surviving victims. These people are told that the illusions were simply hallucinations brought on by the intense heat and dehydration. If the victims display any signs of doubt, they're then and upon graduating high school, left home and went off to college. He had no desire to study, and so he found himself some work to stay occupied. Yet, even with this, the son still took an opportunity to get back at his mother for her nagging. That summer, he got himself hired as a cook at a fast food restaurant. He lucked out, getting a location near Niagara Falls, Ontario. As it turns out, this vacancy was almost perpetually open. The young man soon came to learn that this place had a bad reputation, but he had already agreed to work there. Word on the street was the staff not only has a high turnover rate, but members also go missing altogether. The young man put no stock in any of these stories, though. Besides, the frequent turnover of staff in a fast food establishment is not exactly news. What's more, he was only going to work for the summertime. Then it would be time to head back to college. A little more than 2 months went by with the student working in the restaurant kitchen, and he had now saved up a good bit of money. He informed his boss that he'd be working a few more shifts, then leave to go on a trip prior to the start of the school year. Just as the guy was dreaming about his future excursions, he received an order for Frankenstein's burger. The cook began preparing a cheeseburger with 2 patties and bacon. Meanwhile, something important came up in the back of his head, yet he never really paused to consider it fully. The restaurant's menu does not even have such a dish. Nevertheless, the meal was cooked and brought out to the customer. Immediately upon taking his first bite, unusual things began to happen. He shouted something from Shakespeare, then started behaving theatrically. Then all of a sudden, the rest of the customers and restaurant staff joined in. The following day, the horrible news was relayed to the student's mother. Her son had died in a tragic event. Apparently, it was some problem with the stove at the restaurant. Right then, the woman had a terrible thought come to mind. Looks like he was killed by the burgers after all. Nevertheless, the mother was right. Fast food can be detrimental to your health, especially if you decide to go with the signature dish served at Burger King near Niagara Falls. As a gift, you'll be given SCP-5818, as well as a dose of amnestics. That is, if you even make it out alive, of course. This is the number assigned specifically to the event itself, and is brought on by SCP-5818-1, otherwise referred to as Frankenstein's Burger. The anomalous action is pretty much confined to only Burger King, the style of which is done in the spirit of Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. It was thanks to a post on the Parawatch Hub website that the public first became aware of the anomaly. It first appeared back in April of 2007 bearing simple instructions. The author recommended that he bring out its complaint. They begin to surround the one who ordered it. This one then defends himself, saying that he only ordered it, but did not actually make it. At this point, attention turns to the cook, who had actually given life to this burger monster. The cook walks out to where the people stand, but instead they all perceive him as a green-skinned monster with stitching and seams all over. According to eyewitness descriptions given prior to the amnestics, the cook has a look just like the classical concept of the literary Frankenstein character. And it's here that the climax of SCP-5818's event begins. The talking burger, seeing the cook, asks if his conscience torments him because of what he's made. He then begins to lament his disposition in life, speaking of how everyone wishes to taste his flesh. The cook states that he regrets nothing, nor does he fear revenge. Right then, the now angry crowd of customers decide to punish this villain and charge at him. The poor man is dragged into the kitchen where he's murdered. The lifeless body is then shoved piece by piece into the oven, and it's turned on. While everyone stands around, observing the cook they've just mutilated, the the anomalous burger gives his final speech. He proclaims that, in his opinion, the people should value the warmth of the heart more than delicious food. And in this case, his fate would then not be such a tragic one. The burger disappears, having conveyed morality. Only then do all the event's participants come back to their senses, still recalling everything that just took place. They're subsequently interrogated, then administered amnestics. After all of SCP-5818's effects have been erased, the restaurant returns to operating as normal. Examination of the object is more complicated than usual, due to always having at least one victim after each order. For this reason, and also because of the many civilians that participate, it's forbidden to intentionally set off the chain of events. Additionally, the Foundation has been using their special web scanner, Beta-8 Modern Prometheus, in the work done on the object. A robot is set to monitor the network for SCP-5818 data messages, and promptly deletes them. It's actually not surprising that the anomalous event has the theme that it does, given that the restaurant is located right by a large horror-themed tourist attraction. The restaurant itself was decorated accordingly, with the theme of Frankenstein having been chosen for it. Foundation researchers have a lot of limits to how they can study the strange object. No one even knows exactly what ultimately brings out the mass hallucinations, as well as the root cause of the anomaly itself. I personally think that SCP-5818 is actually artificial. Think about it for a second. A certain force exists that not only has people reenacting scenes from the Frankenstein novel, but just so happens to also take the opportunity to simultaneously show that fast food is evil? Do you really think an anomaly with such clear-cut morals could have appeared on its own? Honestly, it would not surprise me to learn that the object is actually part of the examination work done by a new member of one of the connected organizations. For example, the initiation ceremonies that members of the Serpent State love so much. Most likely, SCP-5818 was crafted by some parent who has fast food-addicted children. Here we have a convenient and terrifying tale, which one can tell to a child to scare them out of ever eating nasty things. Or perhaps someone just has a personal vendetta against burgers. Maybe this person gained a lot of weight from such food, or even got food poisoning from it. Some connected organizations have the goal of destroying the world, and even see themselves as more noble because of it. Therefore, it's not such a foreign concept to me to think that someone wanted to utilize anomalous forces in their war against the fast food industry. Furthermore, this is the only anomaly of its kind. Those present managed to remove the gas mask from the object. When the mask was removed, several people had already accidentally partitioned off the observation room, and as a result, the anomaly's face could not be recorded. But it clearly wasn't something the people gathered there liked. People stepped away from it in disgust, and the anomaly itself melted after the mask had been fully removed. Only a dark puddle remained where it had stood. Analysis showed that its contents contained water, phosphates, human waste, and solid metals. At the same time, SCP-1400-A had undressed itself fully and put on the gas mask. Evidently, the mask had turned this person into the new SCP-1400, and he had then moved to the opposite side of the containment room. This incident was recorded as Incident 1400 Cumberland, and the newly formed anomaly as SCP-1400-1. Subsequently, more information was acquired that similar anomalies exist outside the Foundation. There are at the very least 4 such anomalies. SCP-1400-2 is an obese African male with scars on his arms, who wears a Guy Fawkes mask. The third specimen wears a Crusader's helmet, which conceals the face of an elderly Asian female. SCP-1400-4 is a tattooed Polynesian male in a lion mask used at Chinese festivals, and SCP-1400-5 is a male Latin American wearing the helmet of a spacesuit. There are no trustworthy sources to verify this data, but there are, however, still bases for these claims. I've made my own assumptions about this anomaly. Judging by the behavior of the entity in the gas mask, the masks themselves, whatever their type, possess a parasitic nature. They feed on their human host, converting their body into an immaterial substance. The mask first swallows the victim's brain and then disfigures its face till it can no longer be recognized. After which the entire body becomes a kind of astral projection. Then the creature finds itself a body similar to the person who previously wore the mask. The mask forces its human to emit sounds which possess mimetic powers and compel those around it to want to remove the mask. Then those same mimetic powers force the person holding the mask in their hands to put it on. SCP-1400-A's great reluctance to see the object's face is not an anomaly in my opinion. It's natural to want to avoid infection. When we see an ill person, we subconsciously want to distance ourselves from them so we don't also end up sick. If it's actually a natural reaction, that means that for some time there have been similar masks in human history. SCP-1400-B's desire to remove the gas mask from the object is also completely natural. It helps them avoid infection themselves until the object turns its gaze on them. It should also be noted that the various masks have their own preferences in terms of aesthetics and gender. If the gas mask feels a need to feed on white males, then the Crusader's helmet willingly infects Asian women of a respectable age. On account of these aesthetic specifics, it seems to me that these masks were created intentionally for the genocide of a certain people, and the task of each mask is to wipe one or another group of people from the face of the earth. Or the case could be completely different. As certain groups of people are more vulnerable to certain types of viruses, so too might white males be sensitive to the effects of the anomalous gas mask. What do you think? Could that be right? Write your thoughts in the comments below this video.
The man lost his job during the pandemic, but now never has to work again.
I'm fueled by great people.
The two lovers could only ever meet in secret. The very existence of their relationship went against all of the rules. If anyone were to find out about them, she would surely be killed. But as it was, things turned out even worse. During one meetup, the woman gave the news that she was pregnant. Both lovers were immeasurably happy and just as excited, but not for the harsh realities of parenthood, dangerous illnesses, and financial burdens. The man knew well that he would be unable to protect his own child, and his beloved woman would be forced to hide for the rest of her life. This child would never know a normal life, for this was not possible with such parents. Still, life went on as always, and the child was born. But then everything began to fall apart. The girl's parents and their unchanging views and opinions were what caused this specifically. Nevertheless, each of the parents remained true to their principles, for otherwise these two would not have made it so far.
Because Nova joined.
Came to their door. The mother was killed, and the father was forced to give up his own child to the monastery, and so he did not see her for more than 10 years. The girl never did know her parents, since she grew up among the nuns far away and secluded from the rest of the outside world. This was what could be expected, though, since a creature with horns and hooves would not exactly have been able to safely go to school as a normal child would. There are certain objects in the Foundation with a rich history, bloodline, and close connections to other known anomalies, and SCP-166 is one of these. Nevertheless, she does not know much at all about any of it herself. The object is a teenage girl. At first glance, she differs from other ordinary European children by the presence of horns, a tail, and hooves, much like those of a reindeer. Despite these animal parts, SCP-166 has no mutations in her DNA that would explain this appearance. The object possesses only a single anomalous characteristic. It's limited to a 15-meter radius, although the chances that this may increase over time are not out of the realm of consideration. Anything and everything that's caught within this field of influence will return to its natural, unprocessed state. In other words, it reverts back to the original, natural materials that make it up. One of the most notable examples of this reversal is how electronics and complex technology is affected. First, the metal components break down, and so any ongoing mechanisms fail and cease immediately. However, other objects that are already made out of natural materials, such as clothing or stone buildings, are only slightly affected. There's also an anomalous growth of flora within the radius of SCP-166 power. This often occurs in spots where plants should technically not even be growing. And if there's a camera on the object, this bursting growth of vegetation will extend even to the video surveillance equipment and the electronic locks. Although it would seem that there's more to all this than just SCP-166 sprouting anomalous flower beds around her, the object experiences extremely painful reactions to any kind of pollutants and artificial matter. On one occasion, she almost suffocated due to an asthma attack following a visit to one of the scientists. As it turned out, he was a smoker, although at the time he'd been abstaining from smoking for a full 3 weeks prior to even meeting SCP-166. Sometimes, Foundation personnel simply referred to the object as just a teenage Gaia. According to ancient Greek mythology, Gaia is the goddess of the earth and nature, and was the one responsible for creating all life on the planet. Actually, there's one more reason behind this comparison, but we'll cover that later. After studying all of the object's features, it was taken to the biological section of Site-19. The entryway to these premises had been equipped with a sealed airlock, and a powerful air purification system was also installed on the inside. All personnel who work with SCP-166 wear special protective suits. Gaia herself has also been provided with loose-fitting clothes made of cotton or other natural materials. This goes for the object's food as well. All the dishes are cooked and prepared using only the most organic ingredients. The staff has allowed SCP-166 to keep some of her personal belongings. At first, her requests had to be approved by staff members holding at least a level 4 clearance. However, these conditions have since changed. Now her inquiries are all routed directly to the site director himself. At her request, Gaia was given a Catholic rosary, as well as a Bible. Other religious material is first proofread before being given to the object. The staff originally denied SCP-166's first request for regular visits with a priest, but then the site director had a local chaplain brought to visit Gaia twice a week, although confession is not confidential as it usually would be. Nevertheless, the object is aware of this. The request to have a direct telephone line to the monastery of the Blessed Virgin Mary was turned down, however. As it is, SCP-166 has, since her infancy until the age of 12, lived under the protection of the religious community found in the Our Lady of Mercy convent, which is located in County Galway, Ireland. One of the monastery's pilgrims had accidentally noticed the object and reported it to the local authorities. However, it was not from them that the Foundation came to know about Gaia. No, that story is actually much more intriguing. But in order to fully wrap your head around everything, we must first turn our attention to the Global Occult Coalition database. Back in the 90s, the GOC strike group, codenamed Lancelot, carried out an infamous operation in England. This event is often referred to in documents as the Cornwall Incident. During the mission, an anomaly identified by the GOC as LTE-9927 Black, also known as the Goddess, was killed. She had attempted to execute some kind of planetary ritual that would hurl the entire human race back into the Neolithic era. The Goddess was found along with her child. The unique functionality ends. All the truly peculiar occurrences take place in the location to which the key gave access. The door always opens up to the exact same forest clearing. Immediately upon exiting, one comes out into the middle of a thicket with a narrow path about 80 centimeters wide. Whenever Foundation personnel went to take measurements, the forest became filled with a strange blue fog. And so each time D-Class personnel were deployed there. Immediately after a person steps into the grove, a door loudly slams shut, and upon examination it appears to have been built into a monolithic concrete wall. Participants in the experiments described the fence as being endless. It was also impossible to open the door from inside the anomalous dimension, whether one tried the key or sheer brute force. But this was not all. Such attempts also led to rather unpleasant consequences for the subject. The door's no easier from the outside either. The only known way to get out of SCP-860-1 space is via another door. As a rule, the forest path will lead to it. When the D-Class personnel managed to escape the anomaly, they somehow still appeared at their point of entry. In such cases, the door which they originally used the blue key on opens up, and thus people will exit exactly where they entered, only now back in our reality. Granted, it's difficult to confirm that this is the only operating system, due to the fact that only 4 experiments were carried out. The first subject was a 31-year-old man.
What are you doing here?
He was employed before, but he was demoted to D-Class following
I'm
some
at
incident.
SCP here.
As far as anyone can tell,
Are you at SCP here too?
The Caucasian race.
Yeah.
The poor fellow
Can
was
I
given
join
an
you?
LED flashlight,
Sure, Mom.
video camera, and a headset for
I
communication
haven't
with the
seen you
outside
for a
world.
while, Mom.
He entered the strange
I know.
forest through the front door of an abandoned house located somewhere in Germany. It slammed shut after the man had taken only 2 steps into SCP-860-1. The communication line, however, remained uninterrupted, and so scientists were still able to talk to the subject and also view what was around him. Although the man had been tasked to walk around the forest path to the exit, he paused after only 64 meters. The man reported that he heard what sounded like some sort of distorted howl. For some reason, however, no one on the control center side heard anything.
Where did you come from? Look. Look here, ready, son? Shit. Very surprising. See? I can go for rules. How come I can't do that? Only certain reality benders can do that. Okay. So, yeah. I get to work for rules, yo. Hell yeah. I know. So you can go anywhere you want in the Foundation. Yeah, pretty much. They cannot contain me. I can leave whenever the fuck I want. Fuck, I'm jealous. I know. I can't. I can leave whenever I want, but what's the point of leaving? I know. They'll find us no matter what. Yep. There's multiple universes of SCP Foundation. Sadly, we don't want to go back. Sorry, Mum. Oh, good, son. We don't want to go back to the magical world. I know. Why would we want to go back? Yep. Why fucking would we go back, Mum? That's correct. Why would we? Yep, Mum. Why would we want to go back? Yep. Why would we? That's correct. Why would we? Press play.
And so the employee was forced to push on. Then the blue fog around the area began getting thicker and its shade deepened. The man's flashlight became useless and he began to glance fearfully. For a second time now, he reported hearing sounds coming, although nothing was heard on the other side, just as before. At the control center, odd sounds were still being recorded when the man let out a shout and began rushing along the path. At first, a wild roar was heard, then the sound of footsteps approaching. Judging by the sound, the creature came close to the employee. Either the creature stopped on its own, or the man simply managed to escape in time. Nevertheless, the subject still encountered the same concrete wall with a door. It was not locked, and so the man quite literally fell into a hallway of an abandoned house in Germany. It took him a couple minutes before he decided to turn the doorknob from the inside, but this time he simply went outside. Following the experiment, the man displayed symptoms of severe paranoia. He claimed to be hearing the same distorted howl. The sound apparently comes from far away when the person is left alone. The symptoms eventually subsided and disappeared after a few months, and the employee again behaved normally. The second subject was a 27-year-old woman, fragile and showing clear signs of xenophobia. She also exhibited the same conditions upon exit. The Asian woman did walk a little further than her predecessor before stopping, at which point she stated that something had vaguely distinguished itself in the fog. However, scientists never did succeed in getting her to describe these images. The employee stated her name, then said she needed to go.
Here,
She
here's a
left
joint
all
of
the equipment on
smoke,
the path
Mum.
and went into the
Thanks,
forest.
son.
And so the camera continued to
You're
transmit an
welcome.
unchanging picture until the battery eventually ran
Here's a
out.
joint of
For
smoke.
7 months after, Foundation scientists attempted to get the key out of the lock, break down the door, and do something. But
How
only
did you
efforts
know
were
I was
fruitless.
here?
And then suddenly the
I
door
thank
opened on its
you.
own, and an old woman of Asian descent appeared from out of the anomalous forest.
How long
She
did you
confirmed
get
that she was
here?
the same employee. Generally speaking, her demeanor had become notably calmer, and she complied with the scientists regarding
I
all
was in a
requests except for
coma.
one, to tell them what exactly had happened to her. Even when
For
pressured
a
strongly,
while.
the woman
That's
still
why
refused to
I
say
wasn't
anything at all.
around, like
Then
I
after
didn't
2 weeks,
sense
she passed
you.
away of old age.
Fair
A hardened
enough.
and aggressive 35-year-old
In my
assassin was the
room,
next to enter
in my SCP room.
SCP-60-1 from a new location in England. In addition to the usual equipment, he was also given a fire axe, and it was with this that the man had tried to cut down the door from the inside. After only 4 strikes, the employee reported hearing a loud roar. However, the scientists, as usual, caught nothing, and after a few seconds of arguing, the man went back to chopping the door down. He'd only struck it 9 times, and yet only a few chips flew off of it. After that, a ferocious roar was heard nearby, and the man let out a cry and began fighting off the enemy, invisible in view of the camera. After that, something akin to a meat grinder took place. At least apparently, since all the data is classified. Something had appeared in the frame, something else happened with some sounds, and so on. You'll have to guess for yourself. A 41-year-old African-American with no psychological or physical ailments took part in the last experiment. Its adequacy can be questioned, however, due to the fact that he volunteered. The axe was not given to him, but was instead launched into the anomaly through the third known location, the Foundation site. As always, the door slammed shut behind the subject, but as he began moving down the pathway, differences from the previous experiments were immediately becoming apparent. The fog that envelops the forest displayed a reddish hue instead. Scientists in the control center could make out a constant whispering sound. a sound which this time the subject did not hear. The man easily
Let's
traversed
fuck off of this.
123 meters of the trail and then arrived at a fork.
Do you wanna
One direction
fucking
was paved with
in
stone.
my room
The control
or
center
your
personnel discussed the situation among
SCP room?
themselves.
In my
They told the
SCP
subject to walk
room
along the
or
paved road.
my or
Right
your
at that moment, he
room?
turned around and saw that the path behind him had vanished. Like it had
My
opened with
room
an
would
impenetrable
do.
thicket. Now the fog had thickened, and the
My
whisper
place.
intensified, becoming audible to the man
Damn.
now as well. The experiment ended with the subject screaming and escaping.
Can you
Before
make
the
me
connection
gag
dropped,
and
he
choke me,
shouted,
son?
"Oh my God." These
Sure,
words
baby
were also
mummy.
uttered by the doctor who viewed
Thanks,
the last
baby
seconds of the
son.
recorded footage. Whatever was there is, of
Anytime.
course, unknown, but there
Baby
are reports
mummy,
of
my
two
baby
glowing spheres
mummy.
that can be distinguished in the fog in the
Love
last
you.
spring.
Love you
After some
too,
time
baby
passed,
son.
SCP-860's key suddenly materialized on the desk of one of the scientists.
Mummy,
This
fuck, can you
incident
make
had,
me
for some
gag and
reason,
choke
a
me?
significant impact on the
Sure,
doctor's
baby
psychological
mum.
state.
Thanks,
So much
baby
so that he was
son.
in fact sent for an examination. Perhaps it's because this is his personal key card. A young policeman arrived for the night shift. He was not originally set to work that evening. However, circumstances had changed. Only the day before he and his wife had gotten into a pretty bad fight. So when one of his colleagues was looking for someone to take his shift that night, the young man volunteered. His designated patrol route tonight was on the roads near Cibola National Forest in New Mexico. This area is notorious for all kinds of local New Mexico criminals. Therefore, it's not uncommon to encounter corpses in the forest here. Not surprisingly, there are many myths and rumors surrounding the reserve. Nevertheless, the policeman calmly and logically thought through his duties. He wasn't exactly about to add anomalies to the already existing real-life threats. But alas, this is where he was wrong. That very evening, his shift kicked off with some problems. The policeman came across an abandoned vehicle on one of the access roads leading to the forest. The engine was idling and the driver's door was open. There seemed to be no one near the vehicle. Any other person might have assumed that the driver had just stopped to relieve himself, or perhaps change a flat tire. But the cop had other ideas about what was going on. After all, abandoned cars were something of a trend in this neck of the woods. These alone
Tell the
had their own
cameras how old you
rumors and
are.
superstitions attached, not to mention the other incidents.
I
The
am
policeman examined
7
the spot
years
and made sure that
old.
this was not connected in any way to some cold case
In
involving
the
a local
human
serial
terms.
killer. To date, no
But
missing persons
really,
have ever been found.
I am
So,
700
it makes sense
years
to regard
old.
criminals as kidnappers. The police
In
found
our
the same indicators
terms, in
near the
our
abandoned car
years.
as those found
In
other
the
similar
human
cases.
years, I am 7 years old.
This strange incident
In
had
the
just been
medical
police
years, I am 700 years
then returned to
old.
his patrol when they arrived. Half an hour later, the policeman reached out to the dispatcher and reported
Yep.
that he had noticed a suspicious vehicle.
I am
The car
24
had some
years
slight
old.
dents and scratches, and its color matched the fleece of the
AKA
vehicle turned up on
24,000
witness
years
appearances. The man
old.
claimed that the vehicle's driver had
Yep.
asked him to stop by, signaling to him. No more was heard from the policeman on the radio after this. His abandoned car was later found dozens of kilometers away from the previous crime scene. I'm certain that this is one of those instances where the Foundation is intentionally obscuring the facts from its own employees, not just to compartmentalize based
So
on
yeah,
access
I'm 20
levels,
million
but really
years
actually part
old.
of the situation.
Yep.
What we're looking
No.
at here is SCP
I am
3470.
7
The
million
object
years
became known following
old.
multiple reports from the
Well,
New
I
Mexico
am
police.
24,000
They reported cases of
years
abandoned
old.
cars with engines still running.
Yep.
Most of these incidents had taken
I am
place
older
along
than
the Cibola
you.
National Reserve.
You sure are,
In each of the
Mum.
crime scenes, the exact same tire marks in blue, specifically turquoise, car paint were present. There's also a tendency to stick to the trees or broken branches nearby. The unusual
How
nature
far
of these
do you
disappearances
want
was
my
looked at
dick
more
to go
closely
in
after
you?
2 police officers disappeared. Cops investigated further, and
Or do
after
I
encountering
am
the object,
cool?
they were able to
I
give a
know what,
description.
son? Yes, Mum.
SCP-3470 looks like a Ford Anglia 105E. These particular models were produced from 1959 to 1967. Although there is a person in the driver's seat, his face cannot be seen. The windshield of this anomalous vehicle is always fogged, thus reducing visibility. In order to get its victims to stop, the object will signal them by putting its left hand out the window. On its palms it has 2 human eyes, both of which seem to actually function as eyes normally would. Later on, more key details regarding the object's nature became known. For example, it behaves much like wild predators do. It will go hunting only at night, making its way along the roads in search of prey. When SCP-3470 identifies a lone vehicle, it'll pass it, then give hand signals to slow down and stop. After that, the creature turns the palm with its eyes towards the passengers of the car. However, it's still unknown how it actually attacks its victims. The Foundation deployed 2 Class D personnel to locate and hopefully track SCP-3470. They installed surveillance cameras in their SUV, and the employees were also issued armor-piercing cartridges with built-in GPS sensors. The men drove along the roads near the reserve where the object had been prior. They checked in regularly with the command and control point. When SCP-3470 showed up on the horizon, it moved perpendicular to the Foundation personnel's vehicle, but then turned and moved on as usual. Before the D-Class personnel realized that they had just encountered the object, they'd been conversing nonchalantly and making small talk. During their conversation, one of them realized that the car in front of them was a car from Harry Potter. The exact same Ford Anglia had appeared in the second part of the legendary film series, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. In this particular film, the enchanted vehicle could fly and even seemed to possess some semblance of intelligence. This comparison of the object with the vehicle in the movie subsequently led to the object being unofficially referred to as Harry Potter's Revenge. Other than that, there's actually no connection whatsoever between SCP-3470 and the movie's vehicle or characters. The object suddenly put on its brakes directly in front of the D-Class personnel's vehicle, and then signaled with its hand for them to stop. The outraged men initially began yelling at the driver beratingly, but then it turned its hand toward them and blinked its eyes once. The anomalous Ford then began to drive in reverse, approaching the Foundation vehicle. The Foundation driver immediately started going in reverse as well, while the second officer opened fire on the object. A couple minutes later, the man successfully landed a shot on the object while they were still in the chase. A loud braking sound came from SCP-3470 right as it was hit, and it ceased pursuit. The D-Class personnel had successfully completed their task, so they returned to the base quietly. The integrated tracker had made it possible to track the object's movements. It then became apparent that the anomalous entity behaves much like a predator on Earth. After all, SCP-3470 hunts in a specific area at night and tends to stay in the same area, give or take, during the daytime. And so it was here, to this haunted layer of anomalies, that the Mobile Task Force Lambda-12, also known as Pest Control, was deployed. One impressive fact worth mentioning, this MTF specializes in anomalous parasites, but is also renowned for having never lost a single agent on any of its missions. At the same time, however, Lambda-12 often finds itself falling in as the Quick Reaction Force, or QRF. SCP-3470's nest was discovered in a small cave located in the middle of the forest, not far at all from where the D-Class personnel originally encountered it. The MTF waited until the object went on its nightly hunt, after which 4 agents stealthily infiltrated the lair. Meanwhile, 2 more agents held security just outside. The team was equipped with a flamethrower, a light machine gun, tranquilizers, and a device for launching nets. The walls of the cave were made up of smooth stone, unnaturally smooth. What's more, all of them were covered in tracks that looked just like tire prints. In a large, open chamber underground, some of the agents spotted something shiny. While moving towards this to get a better look, one of the agents stumbled upon a pile of SCP-3470's droppings, which contained the remains of human bones, as well as a police badge. The operatives took a sample, but I never did find the laboratory report that was done on it. Next, Lambda-12 found a nest in the object's lair. In this nest, they saw 10 translucent eggs, which contained the embryos of some kind of unknown 4-legged creatures. It was starting to become apparent that SCP-3470 is actually an anomalous predator that uses an aggressive mimicry tactic. That is to say, it takes the form of a car because this helps it hunt people successfully without arousing any suspicion.
How did you
Following
know
protocols,
on
the agents
the
took half of the discovered eggs with them
Easy.
and torched the rest with the flamethrower.
Okay.
However,
God
just as
damn, your
Lambda
ass
12
got
members
big.
were getting ready to exit the cave,
And your tits
SCP-3470
too.
moved in and blocked their way. The creature peered at the agents with its big-eyed hand,
Thanks.
blinking several times in succession.
You're
One of
welcome,
the Foundation
mommy.
agents shot off his entire cartridge of tranquilizers directly at the anomaly and hit it in the eye.
You're too
SCP-3470
predictable,
let out the
son.
same sound as when it was injured by the D-Class personnel and retreated. The
Fair
agents
enough.
then fled the cave unharmed
I
and
know,
successfully
you're
brought the
too
samples back to
predictable.
base. It's known that there are 4 eggs being kept in Site-42's refrigerator. 3 are still unhatched, the other one was open for research purposes. What this means is that a new object would have appeared from the 5th egg that was removed from the nest, only there's no data about it. nor is there any regarding the true form of the creature. Furthermore, there are some important details. First off, the entity that blocked off the passage from Lamp 12.
If you want to be conscious of your money, then jump on the Virgin Money.
Fuck off, ads.
2 packs of Ben's original.
Before we begin, I'd like to share some... You can place orders.
Ah, gang. I know. Okay, what else? Here we are. Let's have a smoke, then we'll fuck mum. Done, baby son.
One day, after many long years, 2 old friends were finally able to meet up. Both of them served in high-ranking
Love
billets
you
with
more,
military
mummy.
departments. And so talking about
Love
their
you
work
too,
was practically
Isaac,
out of the
son.
question. As a result, their conversion pretty much remained on the topic of family. These 2 friends began reminiscing and looking back on their younger days. They mostly brought up humorous stories, remembering former comrades and such. They had been inseparable from school and knew practically everything about one another. But for the first time ever, the servicemen went a while without seeing each other, due to military life and its accompanying duties. One of them had brought up a funny incident from the school. He had foolishly gotten himself into a dangerous situation, but a man had come to the rescue and actually saved his life. His name was Zachary Callahan. Telling his story, the narrator seemed to speak of Zachary as if he were a close friend. Having finished his story, the man then noted a look of confusion and misunderstanding on his buddy. It seemed he was trying to work out something in his head. As it turned out, his old friend was hearing the story and the name Zachary for the first time. The governor stepped out onto the podium confidently. This would be her first appearance since the election. The woman had a certain stern air about her, which was not inaccurate.
So,
She
how's
was
your
just
wife
such a person.
doing?
She gave a strong speech.
She's dead.
patiently
You
tolerating
know,
those present to express their
side.
dissatisfaction and answering journalists' questions. Right as
Side
the meeting was about to finish, the
15.
governor asked for the crowd's
Yeah,
attention for one more moment.
Oh, it was that child to yeah, containment breach, and yeah, they have to nuke it.
Petitioning their help in finding her relative. Staff members from the governor's
I heard it on the news. I know.
Called up the others. Some began pushing their way towards the journalists. Some even got up and left. Everyone started working to try and get ahead of the developing situation. After all, no one had expected this part of the politician's presentation. But just after one phone call, everyone was convinced that she did not, in fact, have a cousin Zachary. If in one of those videos, I suddenly begin rambling on about Zachary Callahan, call the authorities. Well, actually, you can't do that. And besides, it would be of no use. This guy is a very intriguing and extremely dangerous SCP object. Only Foundation employees with clearances of level 3 and above are read in, and the need to know concerning the details of his life. Therefore, I'll only release the already publicly available information, and then move on to my dessert here. Zachary Callahan is referred to as SCP-1500. He belongs to the Safe class, and is being held in a special containment cell for humanoids at Site-17. At the time of discovery, the object had the appearance of an average plump European. The man was transported to the hospital where the blood test was done. There they found abnormal sugars in the blood samples, much like the sugars that occur in tree sap. Then, green spots suddenly began forming on certain areas of the subject's skin due to the accumulation of chlorophyll. This got the Foundation interested in the patient. Callahan volunteered to be put in containment where he found out what was going on. It later became apparent that he was actually turning into a plant. The melanin in his skin gradually disappeared, and chlorophyll replaced it. Thus, the object essentially has the ability to photosynthesize. If he's located in one particular spot for an extended period of time, SCP-1500 will begin to release thin root-like shoots. They grow out, extending in search of soil from which to pull and absorb water and nutrients. For this reason, the object's containment chamber is constantly illuminated, and the floor is covered in a layer of earth. At least twice a week, a mixed substance is pumped into the room, comprising of different types of clay, rainwater, and various microelements and nutrients. As time passed, it became more and more difficult to move SCP-1500. As it turns out, the cellulose now covered almost every cell in his body, and so his frame became fragile. At one point, Callahan resigned himself to his fate, and requested that they allow him to turn into a plant peacefully. Scientists have yet to unearth the reason behind his strange transformation. In an effort to prevent any harm to the subject, access to his cell was restricted. Automated systems are utilized to replace burnt-out light bulbs, as well as take care of other necessary tasks. Any kind of video surveillance or installation of windows in the room is also prohibited. This is all that the majority of Foundation staff know regarding Zachary Callahan. What's more, it's actually all complete nonsense. All data on SCP-1500 accessible to workers with the first 2 clearance levels is fictitious. The truth behind the object is actually much more frightening. First off, he belongs to the Keter class. And secondly, he possesses powerful telepathic abilities and can affect the consciousness of people. And third, there's no correlation whatsoever to plants. This tale was conveniently concocted out of his appearance, since the creature bears a grayish-green hue. He has a humanoid shape, swollen belly, and long limbs with multiple joints, making them look somewhat like the branches of roots and plants. SCP-1500 lacks any type of sensory organs and has no distinctive physical features, but the absence of these does not prevent the creature from perceiving